This video is now in session. So 2 days ago, there was an incident that happened over Denver. United Airlines Flight 328, a Boeing 777-200, had a right engine failure where its engine cap, where I guess the fan blade, which was hollow, it essentially caused the right engine of the Boeing 777, to fail. Uh, and now this is you might be wondering why this specific event has anything to do with capitalism and the title of this video. Well, I shall explain that. So Pratt Whitney is the company that manufactures and essentially provides maintenance guides for their engines. This, I guess, specific Pratt & Whitney engine model, I believe, was either the PW4056 or 4077. It was one of those engine types. And this wasn't even the first time this kind of engine failure happened. 2 years ago, on United Airlines, the same engine experienced the same engine failure. And the NTSB concluded that Pratt & Whitney did not give proper maintenance instructions to United Airlines in order to manage those engines. And that gets to corporate greed and the need for money, because this is a situation where money is prioritized more than the consumers, than the people and the people's well-being. Because Pratt & Whitney is not the only company to experience. Pratt & Whitney experienced this because of their shareholders. We currently live in a shareholder capitalistic society where the shareholders is the group that is prioritized. And as a result, a publicly traded company, wants to do anything to make its shareholders happy, because if their shareholders are happy, then that means that they as a company get the money that they need. So in order to make the shareholders happy, they have to every single quarter either meet or surpass a shareholders, I guess, profit expectations, their expectations for profits. And if they're able to match that or exceed that, then their stock price rises, and as a result, they get more money. And money is ultimately the end goal in this. If you have money, then you're going to try to do as much as you can to get that money. So for Pratt & Whitney and a lot of other companies, that literally means sacrificing potential human lives and sacrificing safety for the shareholder. And this is not even the first company to do this. Pratt & Whitney, which by the way is owned by Raytheon. Pratt & Whitney is not an independent company. They were bought out by Raytheon, I believe. And they're not the first company to experience this. In fact, if we look at the aviation industry alone, there's been numerous examples of publicly traded companies, focusing more on their profits rather than their customers. Boeing, I mentioned about Boeing, the Boeing 777-200. Boeing experienced their own Boeing experienced their own compromise of safety for profits with the 737 MAX. Airbus, to give some background information on this, Airbus released a new aircraft in the early 2010s called the A321neo, and Boeing did not expect that, and as a result, a lot of airlines started ordering Airbus and the A321neo. Airbus is Boeing's biggest competitor, by the way. So Boeing, as a result, had to quickly make a new airplane so that they can take some of Airbus's sales and show the shareholders that they are fiercely going against Airbus. So in order to quickly get that for profits, what Boeing did was take an outdated plane, which was the 737, and then try to re-engine it, even though it was not meant to be re-engined more than 4 times. And I believe this is like their 5th time that they've re-engined the aircraft. So it's getting pretty old. The airframe is very old. It's way too low to the ground for industry standards. Yet Boeing did it so that they could increase their profits and make their shareholders happy. And as a result, that caused 2 plane crashes and several hundred lives. That's the ultimately the bad part about shareholder capitalism. McDonnell Douglas, another example. Their DC-10, they had a faulty cargo door in the rear of the aircraft in their aircraft. But they did not want to publicize that, or else they would have to delay their airplane's launch and lose profits. So as a result, they let that loose, and 1 plane crash happened from that, and there was another plane that was close to crashing because of that cargo door failure. And that was the reason why McDonnell Douglas had to then be bought out by Boeing, because of it prioritizing profits rather than the customer. So what are some alternatives to this? There are a lot of millennials and Gen Zers who say that they want to move away from shareholder capitalism. But there are 2 questions to that. What kind of system do we then move to, and how do we implement that system? I'm going to try to answer the first question in this video. So there are in my opinion, 2 main alternatives to shareholder capitalism. There is stakeholder capitalism and as well as customer capitalism. Now, I really prefer the customer capitalism more than the stakeholder capitalism, but I'll explain stakeholder capitalism first. So what that kind of form is, that kind of alternative is essentially it's essentially a system where a company is incentivized to prioritize not only shareholders but as well as employees, union workers, labor workers, and as well as anyone that is involved in the company. And that is what shareholder capitalism works. It incentivizes their employees and their well-being more than, I guess, or equal to the shareholder. So that would mean that a company like Uber would have to prioritize their employees, and that includes their drivers and the delivery workers who make only a few bucks an hour and make less than the minimum wage. Uber would be incentivized to then heighten their salary and to make sure that they get the benefits that they deserve. And that is what shareholder capitalism is. And that's actually that sounds pretty good. But there's an even better form of capitalism that, in my opinion, should be the replacement to shareholder capitalism. Customer capitalism is the alternative. Or customer capitalism is it's a I guess a form where companies are incentivized to prioritize their customers and the people who buy and use their products. They are number one in a system like customer capitalism, and the system promotes the customer. That's why it's called customer capitalism. So, for example, for Uber, it would have to make sure that their customer, in addition to their stakeholders, have their proper well-being, and this includes like the drug industry. The drug industry currently prioritizes their profits over their consumers. So in a customer capitalism, they would then be incentivized to help the customer to make sure that the opioid crisis does not come about, and to make sure that drugs like fentanyl are used in a used for correct purposes, not for making money. And that is what customer capitalism is. it stresses the customer. And if we had customer capitalism, then Boeing would most likely not have made the 737 Max. Instead, they would have made an entirely new plane that could actually be better against Airbus. And then you would have McDonnell Douglas, who would emphasize the customer, the airlines, and the passengers, instead of their profits. And there are some companies that used to actually do customer capitalism. And this is a very excellent Harvard Business Review article by Roger Martin. And here Martin provides an example of Johnson & Johnson doing customer capitalism. So in the late 20th centuries, Johnson & Johnson faced a Tylenol incident where in Chicago, a few people went into Tylenol pills and then switched them out for poisonous pills, and as a result, several people died due to ingesting that poisonous pill. So instead of emphasizing its profits and trying to get their PR under control, what they instead did is then innovate and try to figure out how to solve this problem so that future customers of their products won't be poisoned by the switching of their pills. And that's where they came up with the peel to open. So today, when you open a pill bottle, you'll most likely see this little sheet on the top, and you'll have to peel it off. And that was made in part because of this Tylenol incident. And as a result, millions of lives have been saved by this kind of product that Johnson & Johnson helped create. And that's customer capitalism. This is before, I guess, their pretty corrupt days. Today, they're a lot more corrupt with the opioid epidemic, but back then, they were a lot better. In fact, their priorities were the doctors, nurses, and the customers rather than the shareholders. Robert Wood Johnson, who was the chairman of J&J, said this: "We believe our first responsibility is to the doctors, nurses, and patients, to the mothers and fathers, and all others who use our products and services. Our final responsibility is to our stockholders." So as you can see, Johnson obviously put stockholders last in this chain, and they put doctors, nurses, patients, and customers first, and this is customer capitalism. So, and before you start to go on towards customer capitalism, we also have to think about the relationship between companies and the customer. Currently, a lot of us think that the company is the yolk and the egg, while the customer is the white part of the egg, where it surrounds the yolk, and the yolk would have to persuade the customers to be on board with them. But instead, we should think this kind of relationship more like the opposite, where the customer is the yolk and the company is the white part of the egg, where the company tries to figure out how to better the customer so that the customer can then reward the company, because that's what should be first. If a company tries to better a customer's experience, then persuasion will come after that. But the opposite does not apply. Persuasion does not always lead to having a better experience for customers. So again, that is customer capitalism. I always say that is customer capitalism. It's because I'm trying to stress about how good this alternative is. And as you can see here in this statement, employees are also stressed. Employees are number 2 in this chain. They are number 2, and communities are number 3. The fourth person or group in this priority list by Johnson & Johnson in 1943 was the stockholders. And ultimately, this kind of system still helps the stockholders. The stock of J&J kept on rising, and that was because their first responsibility was to the consumer. So this is the kind of system that we have to prioritize, and that is the alternative that I believe in, and an alternative that I hope you can grasp and believe in after my 14-minute speech. So that's the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. In the next video, we'll be doing another redistricting video, but until then, this video is adjourned, and I'll see you in the next one.